All right, so we are here. I'm Yvonne Hao, the Secretary of Economic Development for the state of Massachusetts. I'm really thrilled and honored to be here and to be part of this incredible event. And huge thanks to all of you for being here and for everyone who helped organize it. And I'm here with
Katie Rae. I am the CEO and Managing Partner of Engine Ventures. But before we start, Yvonne started a tradition yesterday that I think we should repeat. So when we say clima, you say tech. Okay, ready? Yvonne.
Sorry.
Clima.
Clima. Clima. Woo! I love it. If you didn't have enough caffeine, that'll get your blood going.
Yeah, exactly.
So Katie and I have actually known each other for a long time. We have a history before this. So I have had a long career in business in large public companies and at Bain Capital for a long time. And in 2016, a friend of mine introduced me to a friend of his, and it ended up being the CEO and founder of PillPack, this tiny little startup. And I made a very strange career twist, and I left Bain Capital in my fancy office on the 43rd floor of the Hancock building. I took a massive pay cut, and I went to go to this startup, PillPack. At the time, we were run rating maybe 60 or $70 million in revenue. So the smallest thing I'd worked on before that was $1 billion. And I went in as COO and CFO, and in my business career up until then, I'd always been like the youngest, the only woman, the only non-white person. And I joined PillPack, and the average age was 26, but if you took me out, it was like 24. It was a really crazy, chaotic startup. And Katie was the first angel check into PillPack. So when I joined PillPack, I was like, holy cow, I'm an alien. Like, what's happened to me? Like, where have I gone? And Katie reached out and said, I invested in PillPack. I'm the first angel check. Let me help you. I will be your guardian angel and Sherpa. So Katie took me out to lunch once a month to just calm me down, make sure that I didn't quit, and gave me advice on how to survive. And so Katie and I have known each other for a long time, and we had an incredible ride at PillPack. It's probably one of the best career decisions I've made, and we had this amazing outcome where we sold to Amazon for $1 billion and made good on your angel check.
We did. And
then since then, and I want to really have Katie tell her story. Katie was not doing this at the time, but then went on to found The Engine with MIT. So tell us about The Engine and how you got there.
Yeah, because we're on this, what's our topic? Scaling investment in climate. So let's see, I had the pleasure of investing for many years in very small early stage companies in Boston, about 120 of them, through Techstars and angel investing. And then in 2016, I called my friend David Fialco, which probably many of you know, who runs a firm called General Catalyst. And I said, David, you're the best fundraiser I know. Teach me everything. And he's kind of a wild and crazy guy, super smart. And he said, you're not going to raise your next fund. You got to come meet the president of MIT. And I was like, what? And MIT had really had this moment where they looked back in a very data-driven way and said, wait, what are the most important problems to solve where we could have huge impact? And where is capital flowing today? And when you looked at the data, it was very stark. Some of our biggest problems, there was no capital flowing to the earliest stages to get these companies off the ground, or very, very little, clearly not enough. And so MIT made this very bold move of starting and founding something called The Engine, which was both an incubator and a venture fund. And they hired me to be the CEO and managing partner. And for the first 6.5 years, I ran the whole thing. And last summer, we divided the incubator side from the venture fund side, because now we'll be over $1 billion under management, and we have 150,000 square feet in Kendall Square. So we incubate a ton of companies there. I sit on Emily Knight's board, who runs that now. And what I spend my day doing is finding the boldest, biggest entrepreneurs who I think can make huge, impactful companies that will change the trajectory of history, really, of how do we generate clean energy? How do we transmit clean energy? How do we do mitigation? How do we have better built environment? How do we decarbonize all of our industrial processes? I think about those big, bold moves that we can make. And I think about their intersectionality with healthcare and with what we call advanced systems, so the things that really run the world. That's It's an incredible journey. So we're a seed investment firm, and we really ride this journey with our founders from the first check until hopefully they IPO and are a huge company. So kind of when I'm at the stage I met Yvonne, we are hoping to rapidly get the companies to that stage so we have the ability to hire execs into the companies to help them scale rapidly and globally.
Well, it's incredible because when I remember Katie talking about this idea of the engine, you were just in the very early phases, and then I came out and I met some of the early founders. It's a funny story. And then if you flash forward to now, recently the governor and I went to one of your companies, Via Separations in Watertown, and I didn't remember this, but Shreya, the CEO, remembered that I had gone to visit them when they were at the engine, when they had first gotten a small check. Now they're this big company in Watertown, and they're scaling and they're growing, and they're featured as one of the most successful climate tech companies in the country. It's really remarkable to see how these startups have scaled. But one thing that's interesting is you and I talk a lot about tough tech. Yeah. Because I've also been in the investing world, and investors love SaaS companies. It's all software, no capital, not a lot of humans, great business model. You can get to revenue and get to break even right away, and there's retention and margin and all that. That is not what you do. Maybe tell us a little about what's different about your companies like Via Separations, and what is tough tech, and how is that different from an AI startup or a SaaS business?
So it's really interesting because I think in investors, LPs' minds, these are people who invest into funds. SaaS is really sexy. You look at high margins, low capital intensity. That's the story we all tell ourselves. But when you actually step back, you're taking very different types of risk. In tough tech, you're taking technical risk, and often you have very large moats around your company, and you have higher capital intensity in the beginning, but not necessarily total higher capital intensity across the life of the business. In SaaS, you have very low capital intensity in the beginning, but very few barriers to entry for somebody else to do it until you get large and with large network effects. So when you look at the two, we've kind of tricked ourselves into believing that SaaS has no risk. But LPs, the sophisticated ones, know that is not true. Plenty of venture funds who only invest in SaaS never return any capital. How could that be if it was such a perfect business model? It's not. It's high competition. We deal with kind of breakthrough technology and things that very, very few teams in the world could put together. And that gives us some advantages in the marketplace that we think are very attractive from an investment perspective. And also, many of these companies have very long tails of revenue once you get to market. So if you're going to be the first fusion power company in the world, that's a pretty large book of business that you're going to bring in, and very long contracts that could be really attractive returns. Or something like Via Separations, right? If you are going to decarbonize the paper industry and many other chemical industries, you're going to have very long-term contracts that are very attractive.
And huge barriers to entry.
This is
like deep science, lots of intellectual property, really hard to do. So one of the things we love about tough tech and about the engine is that there are barriers to entry, and it's hard. It's this combination of technology and software and systems integrated with physical product, which is a big feature of climate tech. And the reason why we love it from the state perspective is because we're good at it. This is our history in Massachusetts. We do hard things, and we do things that are combinations, not just pure SaaS, it's combined with physical product. We've done that in life sciences, we do that in healthcare, we do that in education. There's a kind of a physical component to it. And with climate tech, we're so excited because as these things come out of labs, you have patents and all this research, you have to have physical product, and you can scale across the state. So we love that your companies like Sublime, starting in the east of Massachusetts, are now going to Holyoke, into Western Mass, or Commonwealth Fusion, starting in Somerville, going to Devens. And so we think there's an opportunity to have climate tech across the state in all of our regions.
And there are jobs across the stack of jobs, right? It's not just high-end office, white-collar jobs. These are across
manufacturing jobs.
They're manufacturing jobs. They're across the educational spectrum. They're often very, very good jobs. So I think from a state perspective, it's it is a very important sector. Now, these companies, of course, when they scale, will be across the world. But the fact that we have all of the types of expertise you need in the state is an unbelievable advantage, right? Yeah. And we see that play out over and over again.
Well, and I always talk to the startup CEOs, and I always say that at PillPack, I don't think we would have been successful if we had to, as we were scaling up and building the company, if we had to get on a plane every time. The fact that we could drive an hour and be in our operations center, and we could get the engineers to sit down with the ops people and tinker and experiment and fight it out and solve problems immediately, that turnaround time was huge. And also just the culture and the collaboration. We could all go get a beer at Strange Brew afterwards, and everyone could still be friends. It's so much harder if you're having to build an operations center in another state with a time zone difference and a cultural difference. And now you have to get on a plane, and now you lose days and miscommunications, and now you have lots of finger pointing. And so we would love our companies to stay. They're going to become global. They'll have sites everywhere, but to stay here, and at least as they start to pilot and scale up, to have some operations here.
We agree. We think if it could be closer, that is way easier on everybody to do that. But we are working, I mean, if you just look at the IRA Act and what's happened, almost all of those manufacturing sites have gone to purple or red states. And there is a reason for that, because they make, permitting quicker. There are incentives to come there. There are cheaper labor, cheaper housing. So if we want to compete at that level, we have to push as hard as we can. And I know you're doing that. I mean, we should talk about how we go harder. Like, are we being bold enough as a state? Because I think you're right. We have everything here you need. We have the brains, we have the brawn, we have space, we have interconnect, but we are going to have to push a lot harder and continue that over the next 10 years to keep those jobs here. There is just no way around it. Like, West Virginia is pushing, Texas is pushing, and then you have our biggest rivals, California and New York. So what are we going to do about it? Like, I love what you guys are doing, and I think it's bold, like the legislation you're about to pass and what we're going to hopefully fund Mass CEC with, enormous. It is not enough. You got to go even harder to get to win, I think. What do you think?
I totally agree, and I had a feeling this might come up, so I brought an extra bracelet for you, Katie. I need you on Team Massachusetts to help us do this together. And this is the conversation I have all the time, which is that we have so many awesome things in our state, including all the advantages you just talked about, but this is not the time to hang out. No. This is not the time to coast. And the biggest worry I have is that we are going to lose this moment in time. And so we're here to hustle. Yeah. We're here to fight and to win and to be more competitive. And we do have, challenges. We're not going to be the cheapest. We're not going to be necessarily the simplest. But we can make improvements on those things. But we want to make sure that we have all the incentives and all the tools to put forward the best case. And the conversation I have in the state, now that I spent my whole career in business and now I'm on the other side, is that I say to all of the people in the state, I'm a business person. I've been a business person my whole life. No business person, no startup CEO wakes up in the morning and says, today's Wednesday. What am I going to do to help Massachusetts today? Nobody says that. If they say that, they shouldn't be running a company. When you're in a business, especially a startup, you are hustling to stay alive. Every day you're trying to figure out, how do I make payroll? How do I improve my product? How do I make my customers happy? How do I hire the best talent? That is what they should be doing. It's our job in the state to make sure we put the best case forward to help you stay and expand in Massachusetts, and to make your life easier, to help you be the best world leader from here in our state. And I always talk about, in business, you always have to know who your customer is. Now I'm in public service, I'm in state government. But the public that I serve, our customer in economic development, is our economy, which is really our businesses. And so all of these startups, all of you, you're my customer. How do we help you be wildly successful? What do you need from us, and how can we partner together?
Okay, so let me ask you a different question. I'm going to turn this on you. If there was, you could make anything happen that was super bold, what would you make happen in this state? Like, you have a magic wand. What is the one thing you would do?
Oh, there's many things in that category. So I think there's some things that are, I would say, are macro, not related to climate tech in particular, or climate startups in particular. So we are, in our state, we're very lucky. We are a $750 billion GDP state. And actually, we're the highest income per capita state. We are the wealthiest state. And we have been a leader for a long time because we have leadership in all these industries, we have wicked smart people, all of those things. However, we are the victims of our own success. We've been successful and we've grown for a long time, and we haven't necessarily made the right investments in certain areas. So we now today have a housing crisis. We don't have enough housing. We're 200,000 units of housing short. In a good year, we build 10 to 15,000 units. The math ain't mathing, so that's not gonna work out. So if I had a magic wand, I would have, for the last couple of decades, built a lot more housing. So we'd be in a different position today. We're trying to catch up now, and we have a $4 billion bond bill for housing to try to transform that space and catch up. Transportation, we're so lucky. We have a ton of public transportation. We're the oldest transportation system. That's awesome, except that things get old and you have to maintain these systems. And so now we have the oldest transportation system and we have lots of maintenance that we need to catch up on. So we need to fix that to make people's commutes better. And also, by the way, to be more climate friendly. We have over time, I think, not through any maliciousness or any kind of intentionality, we've just become very complicated and very burdensome, and we're expensive. We have lots of rules, lots of regulations, lots of permitting, lots of taxes. I wish we could just take you know how in business you do zero-based budgeting?
That's right.
I wish we could start with zero-based budgeting and start from scratch, a blank sheet of paper, and say, okay, what do we actually really need? And let's not do any more than that. But that is hard when you have kind of an incumbent system. So we're trying to fix all of these things. It's gonna take some time, but the thing I think about is that it's worth fixing. This is a pretty magical, special place. What other states are there in the country that have this much brain power, this much kind of economic opportunity in life sciences, education, financial services, AI, robotics, and climate tech? And also, by the way, what other states are such an awesome place to live, where you have mountains and ocean and culture and sports and diversity, and we embrace letting people love who they want to love, and we embrace people living their best lives, and we care about education and immigration. What other states can do that? And so we're not perfect by any means. We have work to do, but we're doing the work, and that's why I think we should be here.
Okay, so how about we wave our magic wand and try to drive down the cost of electricity and up the amount of clean energy in this state? What would we have to do that could happen even faster? And a lot of it is permitting and regulation. I mean, it is incredibly burdensome here and will make it very hard. And right now, we're kind of at the end of the line, so our cost of electricity is very expensive, right?
So this is a conversation we have a lot at Cabinet, and this is one of those things where I think historically, and I said this yesterday on the panel, there's been a lot of animosity and antagonism between people like me in business and economic development and people on the environment and regulatory side. But you see something different happening in this administration. We're actually on the same team and we're working together. And so historically, I think you have the regulatory folks saying, let's, put more requirements and make it more difficult and make everything, much more expensive because we want to protect things. And you have business people saying, come on, let's just make things cheap and easy. We need to do and in both. Yep. We can't make things so cheap and easy that we destroy our environment.
Of course.
But we can't make it so perfect on the environment that we don't have any companies and we don't have any jobs. And so we are working very closely together to figure out how you do and in both. Mm-hmm. And it's much harder to do and in both. But by the way, the alternative is if you want super cheap and easy, you're gonna go move to a state as a climate tech company that doesn't actually even believe in climate change. That's not probably the right values for a climate tech company. So do the work with us and help us get better on some of this and give us the feedback. Tell us what other states are doing so we can get better and we can model ourselves. So that's kind of the conversation I have with companies.
Yeah, and I think a really important one, and the reality, you have to prove your project so you can raise more capital and stay alive.
Yep.
So if a state is gonna go faster, you're probably gonna have to choose that. And it stinks because people would love to be more values aligned.
The other thing we should really be doing is that one of our great powers in the state government, we don't have infinite powers, sadly. I wish we did, but I've learned in a year and a half we don't. One of our great powers we could use more effectively is the state as customer.
Absolutely.
Since we do believe in climate change in our state and we have ambitious targets, we need these new technologies. We need these new climate tech companies. How do we use our state procurement power to actually help these startups get revenue faster? So that's something we should definitely work on.
That because, you have folks like Boston Metal, VIA, you have Sublime Concrete, Commonwealth Fusion. You just have a plethora. Our companies, other people's companies here, that if the state would procure, it makes a big difference. you pour a lot of cement for the state, I think.
So this is part of the reason why we want to get this economic development bill passed, the Mass Leads Act. The $1 billion we have in there, a lot of that is today, for a lot of these startups, there's still a price differential.
That's right.
If we have resources, how do we close that gap and make it easier for people to adopt these technologies, including our own state government, and help these companies scale up, right?
Or how do we get our business community to also lean into that,
Yep.
right? I mean, we have an incredible business community here who could also do procurement
Totally.
that would drive innovation in the state and these companies to stay here.
We have some of the most ambitious leaders on climate change here in our state. State Street, they were a sponsor yesterday. Bank of America is here, Fidelity. They all have very ambitious climate goals. They all want to do the right thing. How do we get them to partner more with these startups?
Right, with the startups and the state. I think that is something we could do very rapidly.
Team Massachusetts.
Team Massachusetts.
Exactly.
Can I say climate, you say
tech.
Okay.
Do you want to take any questions?
Yeah, let's take a question.
Does anyone have any questions? There's a microphone in the middle there. We can talk for probably hours and hours and hours. But does anyone have any questions for us? Or any feedback? Or no? We're just
Or
gonna
no,
riff?
we keep talking. Okay. It's hard to see anyone out there, so.
Well, one of the other things I think about a lot is we talk about life sciences and our incredible success there, and that was an example of Team Massachusetts, the public sector, the private sector, $1 billion, and then the whole ecosystem to kind of create this miracle we have. And there's a lot of similarities with climate. There are some really important differences. One of the most important differences I think about is the FDA. In life sciences, you have a very predictable path. And once you do clinical trials and once you get FDA approval, you kind of have a monopoly and you have a proven business.
Yep.
And it's easy to go public, it's easy to raise more funding. In climate tech, there's not really an FDA. And so the path is a little more bumpy, there are more ups and downs. How do you think about that as an investor and also for your companies?
Well, I think it's really tricky, especially with breakthrough science. Like, everybody loves the word breakthrough, but like, is it real? And then do the economics pan out, I think is the biggest question. So it might be a great breakthrough, but does it cost so much forever that you'll never be a business? So that's what we're always navigating with the startups. And I think the most important thing is to have a set of honest brokers around the table. You know, so I think in a biotech company, you often have a scientific advisory board. You need something very similar in a climate tech company where it's like somebody actually looking at the physics, somebody actually looking at what it's going to cost to produce these things. Because if we aren't honest with ourselves about that, you're going to get the Theranos of climate tech, which is my personal nightmare.
Yep.
And it is going to happen. Because as things get sexy in climate tech, people are throwing money around and not really understanding the technology. So it's a self-policing situation, but I think it is really important to do that. And, that's different because we don't have an FDA. So it's even more incumbent on the investor set in this group to push each other on that. And that's the role of later rounds, is that the next set of investors coming in is really checking the math.
And diligencing. Because trust is everything.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we have less than a minute left. Any parting advice to any startups out here who are trying to make it, or to folks who are trying to raise funding, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the very most important thing is to know what your differentiator is and know what your big story is. We have so much to do in climate, like anything that's a small change probably isn't getting funded. So really, I would focus on something that has a big impact. And there are so many incredible resources, whether it's at the Engine Ventures or Greentown Labs or many, many other places to get advice. So please come see us and come see our friends who have developed an incredible ecosystem.
I love it. I'm going to end with my favorite quote from this event, which was last night when Philippe Cousteau, who's the grandson of Jacques Cousteau, we were at the JFK Library. He said, "We should ask not what the planet can do for us, but this is the moment to ask what we can do for our planet." So we're thrilled to have you, Katie, doing all this great stuff for the planet and all your companies, and thrilled to have this audience here. Thank you.
Yvonne.